Okay, we're going to configure this network for VLANs and trunks, and we've set up so far with some PCs, and just explain a little bit how we're going to do this. This PC will be in VLAN 1, and this PC will be in VLAN 1, and you can see correspondingly, if it's in VLAN 1, the IP address is 192.168.10.100, and then VLAN 2, this PC is 192.168.20.100. So you can see that there's a reference there that if the VLAN's named 1, they're on the 10.100 network essentially, or the 192.168.20 network, or the 192.168.30 network for VLAN 3. And you can see over here that this computer is also in VLAN 3, so 192.168.30.101 and 20.101 and 10.101. So this guy's going to be in VLAN 1. And then this computer here will be used for administrative purposes. He's going to be in VLAN 99, which will be a management VLAN. And so his IP address is 192.168.99.100. And the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to pull out some switches. So we're going to click on switches. We're going to grab some 2960s, and we're going to put one here at the top. That'll be switch 0. And then this one right here be switch 1. And then this one right here will be switch 2. Now we need to connect these switches together, and we're going to be doing trunks from switch to switch. So we'll start there with the trunk ports. For the trunk ports from switch to switch, I'm going to go to the connections and I'm going to grab crossover cables, because when you cable a switch to a switch, you're supposed to use crossover cable typically. So I'm going to grab a crossover cable, and I'm going to click on this top switch here. I'll click on the top switch and I'll start off at Fast Ethernet 01, and I'll go to switch 1 on Fast Ethernet 01. Okay, and then I'm going to click on that again, and I'll start here, and I'm going to this time use Fast Ethernet 0/2 and cable that to the first Ethernet port on that switch. So the top switch is using ports 1 and 2, and these switches are each using port 1, and these will eventually be trunk links that we'll be configuring for these switches, right? Now we need to set up these PCs to different ports on the switches also. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to put these PCs on ports on our switch, attach them with straight through Ethernet cables. So what we're going to do is we'll click down here on our straight through cable, right? I'm in the cables area. So click on the straight through cable, attach it to this PC, Fast Ethernet, and then drag it over. Click on this switch right here, click on it, and I'm going to put it on, let's say, I'll put this one on port 6. That's a convention that's used a lot in the curriculum. Then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'll click here, put it on the Ethernet, drag it over, and I'll put it on port 11. And then I'll click on straight through and click on here, Ethernet, and attach it here and put it on port 18. Okay, so we've put these on here on ports. If you look on the picture here, maybe you can see it, 6, 11, and 18. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll come right back. Oh, and this admin, I'm going to put this admin, before I go, put this admin, Ethernet, drag him over there, and put him on the last port of the Fast Ethernet ports, put him on port 24. All right, so I got all these hooked up. Now I'm going to hook up these guys and come right back. Okay, now we've got everybody hooked up. And the goal of this assignment right now, all of these computers are hooked up to ports on these switches, and they're all part of one big network, except that these guys have the wrong IP addresses, right? This guy's on the 30.100, the 20.100, the 10.100, 99.100. So what we need to do now is take these switches and segment these switches into separate VLANs. So we have to create the VLANs on the switches and then assign ports on the switches to those VLANs. So I'm going to click on switch 0, command line interface. I'm going to hit enter. Then I'm going to hit enable to get into privileged mode, right? And then I'm going to go to configure terminal. That's the longhand for it. and get into global configuration mode. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start making some VLANs. So I'll start with the management VLAN. I'm just going to type in VLAN 99, enter. Then I'll say name equals, or name space, and I'll say MGT management, and then an and sign, and native. So this will be for the VLAN 99 will be for the management, and also will be what's called the native VLAN. All right, and that's done, and I'll hit afterwards exit. Okay, so that creates VLAN 99. Now what I can do is I can just use the up arrow and go to VLAN and make my VLAN 10, and then put in the name. I'm going to use up arrow and change the name to Lab 1, and then up arrow to exit, and then I'll up arrow to VLAN and do 20 and hit enter, and then do up arrow and name that name space Lab 2, and then exit, and VLAN 30, hit enter, and up arrow to name lab, name that Lab 3, and then exit. Okay, so now I've created my VLANs on my switch. I'll do Control C to jump out, and then I'll do a copy running dash config space startup dash config to copy it to NVRAM and save my configuration. I'll take the default name and hit enter. And then what I want to do is I'm going to do a show VLAN brief to see if my VLANs were creative. And you can see here that my VLANs in this window, you can see that my VLANs were created. I've got VLAN 1 is the default VLAN. You can't change it, can't get rid of it. I've got VLAN 10, 20, 30, and 99, labs 1, 2, 3, and management native. Notice I put the name on them. And then the other defaults are 1002 through 1005 for token ring and FDDI networks. You can't get rid of those either. So you got your 5 default networks and then the 4 we created. Notice the VLANs are active, but they haven't been assigned any ports. Right now, all the ports on the switch, all these ports are on VLAN 1 by default. So we'll be changing that. But the next thing I need to do is I need to open up my other 2 switches and also put the VLANs on those other 2 switches. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll go back to switch 0. So while we're gone, why don't you put your VLANs on these switches also? To do that, you just click on the switch, go to your command line interface, and do the same thing.